Hello, everyone, and welcome to our June program, Price Transparency and Pricing Strategy. Glad to have you with us on our Smart Marketing program. I'm Art Sturm. I'm your host, and along with me is Frank Tiedemann, President of Salient Strategy. Frank, as always, good to have you with us.
Delightful to be here and with the audience.
Well, let's do a quick review of what we've talked about. Frank, as you've mentioned before, there are demonstrable consumer demands for price information, aren't there?
There sure are, Art. There's a host of information that we've put together. 64% of consumers have trouble finding cost comparison information, and 79% report that they would like a website that compares total cost of medical services. Most importantly, 67% say price comparisons would affect their decisions on where to seek care.
Yeah, so pretty compelling. The other thing we're seeing that you pointed out is that consumers are applying how they view price in healthcare as they have from other industries, right?
Yeah, this is really an interesting finding. They're expecting to be able to find the cost of the entire episode of care. They're not happy to just get hospital pricing anymore. They want to know the cost of shoppable, standard, or elective services like screenings and immunizations. And they would prefer the use of symbols or estimated dollar amounts to simplify choosing high-value providers, like the restaurant and hotel industries have done for years.
Yeah, so once again, healthcare is now being considered like other purchases, and consumers being price sensitive really have a very clear idea of what it is that they're looking for in that price information. So today we'd like to talk about price strategy versus price transparency. Well, what's the difference? Pricing strategy is the use of price to differentiate products or create a value proposition for short or long-term sales. Price transparency really is just a listing of services and their corresponding prices, and we see both of these in play in the market every day. We've all seen the $99 special, and that's part of a strategy that says we're going to use a low price point to get people in so that we can move them up on the pricing scale. Or price transparency simply is a list of all the prices that are out there, and the consumer has to sort of cobble together what the whole experience will cost. Price transparency, while being a very popular idea in healthcare, is proving to be pretty frustrating for consumers because it's essentially just that, a listing of prices. It's interesting, other industries that have used a pricing strategy see that yields way above average financial results. And what I want you to look for here are the tan and the orange bars against the blue bar that simply says those companies with pricing strategies really excel in the marketplace on pretty much all of the key financial metrics. So while price transparency has its place, a strategy seems to have a better benefit for the sponsoring organization. So let's take a look at how that comes about. There really are short and long-term pricing strategies, right, Frank? What's the difference?
Well, in the short run, strategies that we've seen in healthcare tend to maximize price and margin under commercial health plans, while the longer-term strategy, which is something we're all striving for, is to set price and margin to achieve break-even or potentially profitability under Medicare. It seems to be the tougher of the two.
Right, and that's why it's a little longer term, but can you do both in today's environment?
Some organizations that are outstanding have done both. Some can't do either one, Art, unfortunately,
right.
And it's getting harder for those organizations to survive.
Yeah. Well, let's take a little closer look at how this might work. Our belief is to really start simple with a pricing strategy. And really, already you have this in play with your screening and diagnostic services. These are low-cost items that really can be taken to the market as a way to lead people to a higher economic experience. And in the retail world, we say these screenings and diagnostic services allow people to sample the brand, which is the experience, and get some value. They learn about their health. It's usually, as we said, non-threatening price of under $100, and now it may even be free under the new ACA rules. So to really understand a strategy, you really need to look at the transactional versus the downstream revenue. So let's take a look at mammograms, for example, and this is live data from Purple Hospital. They did 2,760 first visit mammograms. So this was the first economic experience that women had, and the transactional value was about $600,000. But 4% of those patients had downstream oncology encounters. So if you break it out, you can see how those 112 patients brought in additional revenue through medical hematology, medical oncology, and radiation oncology. And that part of the experience was, $466,000 in revenue, $197,000 in contribution margin from all of the channels. So really, when you look at a pricing strategy, what you want to do is look at that transactional value of $599 plus the downstream revenue of $466, and you can see that those mammograms, those 2,760 mammograms, ended up generating a little bit north of $1 million in revenue for Purple Hospital. So the logic sort of goes like this, that, free is the price that was offered to consumers under commercial and Medicare reimbursement, but the value of the transaction to the hospital was about $217. Not that great. But when you look at 4% of the population converted then into what? A $4,000 transaction, you can see how a strategy to bring people in for an appropriate point of care or service can lead them into a higher economic experience. So really a pricing strategy, really is the integration of elements that result in this thing called the value proposition to the buyer. And there's a lot of variables you can look at: differentiators, brand strength, prior experience, perceived value. There's a lot of variables that go into this notion of price, but clearly that's how you want to build your strategy, because some of these variables will allow you to come in with a higher price long-term and maybe a lower price initially. But again, think it through, not just on the transaction, but on the total value of the customer. So Frank, what about a price strategy in a price-sensitive environment?
Well, this is the reality most of us live in. We have to recognize that the first contact with a customer, a patient, is the most important. Are they having a good experience? Will they have perceived value? Are they likely to return? And do you have a conversion protocol in the infrastructure to turn that into long-term and positive revenue?
Yeah, that's really key, isn't it? I mean, if we just go for that transactional moment and we don't have a way to convert these individuals into another appropriate care stream, sort of wasted our money and the strategy really falls apart, right?
Exactly. And most organizations are good at, the offer, but not necessarily the protocol to capture that patient.
Exactly. And then, maybe the price sensitivity for further services maybe they may see that as less resistance because it's they've already had a good experience. They see the value. They trust the provider, and it's the higher price really is mitigated by other factors. So what is it we want our folks to consider, Frank?
Well, most hospitals are really still in a fee-for-service environment, and we recognize that. So this does lend itself to that. Remember that the rate of requests for pricing information is a growing factor in our industry. The pace of that may vary from market to market, but things like the newly announced plan by Medicare to link pricing in the future to availability of information for consumers is a terribly strong indicator of the way the market is going to go.
Absolutely. So on a pricing strategy, we recommend that you experiment with identifying a procedure that starts with a low cost of entry. And again, screenings, diagnostic services is a great place to look. use the appropriate entry point, as we said, but the key thing is to go to targeted consumer segments. Use your CRM system or other targeting tools to really isolate those individuals that have the highest potential yield. But as we said earlier, critical to success is a clear set of protocols and an infrastructure to move the at-risk individuals into the next level of appropriate care. Frank, I think that kind of wraps up our thoughts for this session. Any key takeaways you want to give to our listeners today?
I think it's time that our industry really looked at price as something other than just cost plus, and we've been trying to carry that message and hope that we're getting through to people. It's a powerful tool and an important way to communicate with your public.
And it's a certainty to come in the marketplace, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, we want to thank our audience for being with us today. If we can help you out, here's our contact information. I'm Art Sturm. Frank, as always, great having you with us.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next month. Thanks for listening in.